E. That sounds healthy. Oh, Jesus. WCA Regulations, version May 1st, 2021, official 7845F8D. Notes: WCA Regulations and Guidelines. The WCA Regulations contain the full set of regulations that apply to all official competitions sanctioned by the World Cube Association. The WCA Regulations are also supplemented by the WCA Guidelines. The regulations should be considered a complete document, but the guidelines contain additional clarifications and explanations. Wording: uses of the word must not, should not, and may match RFC 2119. Information on the internet. Website of World Cube Association, www.worldcubeassociation.org. Original source of the WCA Regulations, www.worldcubeassociation.org/regulations. WCA Regulations in PDF format. Source: development of the WCA Regulations and Guidelines is public on GitHub and the discussion is public on the WCA forum. Contact: for questions or feedback, please contact the WCA Regulations Committee, WRC. Contents: note: because article and regulation numbers are not reassigned when regulations are deleted, there may be gaps in numbering. Article 1, Officials. Article 2, Competitors. Article 3, Puzzles. Article 4, Scrambling. Article 5, Puzzle Defects. Article 7, Environment. Article 9, Events. Article 10, Solve State. Article 11, Incidents. Article 12, Notation. Article A, Speed Solving. Article B, Blindfolded Solving. Article C, One-Handed Solving. Article E, Fused Move Solving. Article F, Clock Solving. Article H, Multi-Blind Solving. Article Y, Temporary Regulations. Article 1, Officials. 1A. A competition must include a WCA delegate and an organisation team consisting of one or more individuals with the following officials: judges, scramblers, and score takers. 1B. The organisation team of a competition is responsible for logistics before, during, and after the competition. 1C. The WCA delegate is responsible for ensuring that the competition adheres to the WCA regulations and any applicable WCA policies or requirements. The WCA delegate may appoint other members of the organisation team to carry out specific responsibilities on their behalf, but is ultimately accountable for how these responsibilities are carried out. 1E. Each event must have one or more judges. 1E1. A judge was responsible for executing the procedures of the event. 1E1A. A judge may judge multiple competitors simultaneously at the discretion of the WCA delegate as long as the judge is able to ensure that all WCA regulations are followed at all times. 1E2. Every competitor must be available for judging. If required to judge, a competitor may be excused only for a legitimate reason, for example being unfamiliar with the puzzle, at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Penalty: disqualification from the competition. See Regulation 2K. 1F. Each event must have one or more scramblers, except from 3x3x3 fewest moves. 1F1. A scrambler applies scramble sequences to prepare puzzles for attempts. See Regulation A2. 1F2. Every competitor must be available for scrambling. If required to scramble, a competitor may be excused only for a legitimate reason, for example being unfamiliar with scrambling notation, at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Penalty: disqualification from the competition. See Regulation 2K. 1G. Each event must have one or more score takers. 1G1. A score taker is responsible for compiling results. 1G2. Changes to the result on the score sheet are only permitted at the discretion of the WCA delegate. 1H. Competitors in the same round of an event may compete as a single group or be divided into multiple groups. 1H1. Scramblers and judges for a round should not judge for or scramble competitors in their own group before they have finished all of their attempts for their round. They may scramble for or judge competitors in their own group at the discretion of the WCA delegate, but the organisation team must ensure that scramblers and judges cannot see any scramble sequences for their attempts that they have not attempted yet. See Regulation 4B2. 1J. All officials may compete in the competition. 1K. Officials may serve multiple roles, for example, organisation team, WCA delegate, judge, score taker, scrambler. Article 2. Competitors. 2A. Any person may compete in a WCA competition if they, complemented by Regulation Y3. 2A1. Comply with the WCA regulations. 2A2. Meet the competition requirements which must be clearly announced before the competition. 2A3. Are not suspended by WCA board. 2B. Competitors below the age of 18 must obtain consent from their parents or guardians to register and compete. 2C. Competitors register by providing all information required by the organisation team, including name, country, date of birth, gender, contact information, selected events. 2C1. A competitor is not eligible to compete without a completed registration as determined by the organisation team. 2C2. Returning competitors must provide personal information consistent with the WCA profile. If a competitor wishes to change or update their personal information between competitions, for example a change of nationality, name or gender, they must contact the WCA results team. 2D. A competitor's name, country, gender and competition results are considered public information. All other personal information is considered confidential and must not be disclosed to outside organisations or persons without the consent of a competitor. 2E. Competitors must represent a country of which they hold citizenship. The WCA delegate should verify citizenship by means of documents, for example a passport, at their first competition. If the competitor is found ineligible to represent the country under which they have registered, the competitor may be disqualified retroactively and or suspended at the discretion of the WCA board. 2E1. The eligible countries are defined by the WCA list of recognised countries. 2E2. Competitors with updates to their citizenship status may change their country of representation before or at their first competition of a calendar year, except if the competitor loses citizenship of the country which they were previously representing, they must change the country of representation before or at their next competition. See Regulation 2C2. 2E3. Competitors who have no citizenship may compete as stateless. 2F. Competitors must obey venue rules and conduct themselves in a considerate manner. 2G. Competitors must remain quiet when inside the designated competition area. Talking is permitted but must be kept at a reasonable level and away from competitors who are actively competing. 2G3. Competitors in a competitor waiting area must not communicate with each other about the scrambled states of the puzzles of the round in progress. Penalty. Disqualification of the competitors from the event at the discretion of the WCA delegate. 2H. Competitors must be fully dressed well in the competition venue. At the discretion of the WCA delegate, competitors may be disqualified from the competition for inappropriate clothing. 2I. While competing, competitors must not use electronic or audio equipment, for example, cell phones, MP3 players, dictaphones, additional lighting, apart from the StackMat timer or stopwatch. 2I1. Competitors may use non-electronic aids that do not give an unfair advantage at the discretion of the WCA delegate. This includes 2I1A. Medical or physical aids worn by the competitor, for example, glasses or wrist brace. As an exception to Regulation 2I, medical aids may be electronic if the competitor does not have comfortable non-electronic alternatives, for example, if the competitor has a personal hearing aid or pacemaker. 2I1B. Earplugs and earmuffs, but not electronic headphones or earbuds. 2I1C. Hand warmers. 2I1D. Food and drink. 2I2. Competitors may use cameras at the solving station at the discretion of the WCA delegate, but the following restrictions apply from the start of the attempt until the competitor stops the solve. Penalty for breaking a restriction, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. 2I2A. Each camera monitor must be blank or out of sight of the competitor. See Regulation A5B. 2I2B. The competitor must not interact with, or for example, operate, hold, wear any active camera. Exception. The competitor may wear a camera mounted on their head as long as it is out of their sight and it is clear that they are not interacting with it apart from wearing it. 2I3. The competitor may have a cell phone in their pocket as long as it is clear that they are not otherwise interacting with it. 2J. The WCA delegate may disqualify a competitor from a specific event. 2J1. If a competitor is disqualified from an event for any reason, they are not eligible for any more attempts in that event. 2J1A. If the competitor has already started at least one attempt in a round before being disqualified from it, the results of all remaining attempts in the event are recorded as DNF. If the competitor has started no attempts, i.e. has no results or only has DNS results, no results are recorded. 2J2. If a competitor is disqualified during the course of an event, their earlier results remain valid, exception cheating or defrauding, see Regulation 2K2A. 2K. At the discretion of the WCA delegate, a competitor may be disqualified from some events, a single event, multiple events, or all events, if the competitor 2K1 fails to check in or register in time for the competition. 2K2 is suspected of cheating or defrauding the officials during the competition. 2K2A, the WCA delegate may disqualify any suspected results. 2K3 behaves in a way that is unlawful or violent or indecent or unsafe or intentionally damages venue facilities or personal property within the venue. 2K4 distracts or interferes with others during the competition. 2K5 fails to abide by WCA regulations during the competition. 2K6 does not fulfill the event's requirements, for example, not knowing how to solve a puzzle. A competitor must not compete with the expectation of a DNF result or an intentionally poor result. 2L. A competitor may be disqualified immediately or after a warning depending on the nature and severity of the infraction. 2L1. A disqualified competitor is not eligible for the refund of any expenses due to participating in the competition. 2N. Competitors may verbally dispute a ruling to the WCA delegate. 2N1. Disputes are only permitted during the competition within 30 minutes after the disputed incident happened and before the start of any following rounds of the relevant event. 2N2. The WCA delegate must resolve the dispute before the start of the next round of the event. 2N3. The competitor must accept all final rulings of the WCA delegate. Penalty disqualification from the competition. 2S. Competitors with disabilities that may prevent them from abiding by one or more WCA regulations may request special accommodations from the WCA delegate. Competitors requesting such accommodations should contact the organisation team and WCA delegate at least 2 weeks before the competition. 2T. Each competitor must be familiar with and understand the WCA regulations before the competition. 2U. Competitors must be present and ready to compete when they are called to compete for an attempt. Penalty disqualification from the event. 2U1. An exception. A competitor who is not present in time for an individually scheduled attempt, example a 3x3x3 first moves attempt, a 3x3x3 multi-blind attempt, may be considered to have declined that attempt, DNS, at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Article 3. Puzzles. 3A. Competitors must provide their own puzzles for the competition. 3A1. Competitors must be ready to submit their puzzles when they are called. See Regulation 2U. 3A2. Puzzles must be fully operational such that normal scrambling is possible. 3A3. Polyhedral puzzles must use a color scheme with one unique color per face in the solved state. Each puzzle variation must have moved states and solutions functionally identical to the original puzzle. 3A4. Puzzles must not have electronic components, for example, Bluetooth or Wi-Fi capabilities, motors, sensors, lights. See Regulation 2I. 3D. Puzzles must have colored parts which define the color scheme of the puzzle and must be one and only one of the following: colored stickers, colored tiles, colored plastic or painted or printed colors. All color parts of the puzzle must be made of a similar material. 3D1. For competitors with a medically documented visual disability, the following exceptions apply. 3D1A. Blind competitors may use textured puzzles with different textures on different faces. Each face should have a distinct color to aid in scrambling and judging. 3D1B. Colorblind competitors who cannot distinguish between the necessary number of colors may use colored parts with patterns if it has been explicitly approved according to Regulation 2S. Patterns may come from stickers or be drawn. 3D2. The colors of the colored parts must be soldered with one uniform color per face. Each color must be clearly distinct from the other colors. 3H. Modifications that enhance the basic concept of a puzzle are not permitted. Modified unmodified versions of puzzles are permitted only if the modification does not make additional information available to the competitor, for example, orientation or identity of pieces, compared to an unmodified version of the same puzzle. 3H1. Pillowed puzzles are permitted. 3H2. Puzzles whose colored plastic is visible inside the puzzle, for example, stickerless puzzles, are permitted. This does not include the following puzzles. 3H2A. Puzzles with transparent parts that can reveal more information about the state of the puzzle, exception, an overlay sticker or a logo, see Regulation 3L. 3H3. Any modifications to a puzzle that result in poor performance by a competitor are not grounds for additional attempts. 3H4. For clock, custom inserts the same shape and size as the traditional paper inserts are permitted at the discretion of the WCA delegate. The inserts must have a clear indication of 12 o'clock that matches the original inserts. 3J. Puzzles must be clean and must not have any markings, elevated pieces, damage, or other differences that significantly distinguish any piece from a similar piece. Exception, a logo, see Regulation 3L. 3H1. Puzzles are permitted to have reasonable wear at the discretion of the WCA delegate. 3J2. Definition. Two pieces are similar to each other if they are identical in shape and size, or mirrored in shape and identical in size. 3J3. Corrugated or textured parts which permit the orientation of pieces to be distinguished by feel are not permitted for blindfolded events. 3K. Puzzles should be approved by the WCA delegate before use in the competition. 3K1. If a not permitted puzzle is found during a round, the competitor must not continue to use the puzzle and must submit a replacement. 3K2. Penalty for attempts done with puzzles which are not permitted, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. The following exceptions apply. 3K2A. If not permitted puzzle is found before a round is complete, affected results in the round may be replaced with extra attempts at the discretion of the WCA delegate. 3K2B. 3x3x3 multiblind. If any puzzles are found to be non-permitted, such puzzles may be individually counted as unsolved without disqualifying the entire attempt at the discretion of the WCA delegate. 3L. A puzzle may have a logo on a color part. If it does, it must have at least most one color part with a logo. Exception for blindfolded events, a puzzle must not have a logo. 3L1. The logo must be placed on a centerpiece. Exceptions for puzzles that do not have centerpieces. 3L1A. For premix and 2x2x2, the logo may be on any piece. 3L1B. For a square one, the logo must be on a piece in the equatorial slice. 3L2. The logo may be embossed, engraved, or consist of an overlay sticker. 3M. All brands of puzzles and puzzle parts are permitted as long as the puzzles comply with all WCA regulations. Article 4. Scrambling. 4A. A scrambler applies scramble sequences to the puzzles. 4B. Puzzles must be scrambled using computer-generated random scramble sequences. 4B1. Generated scramble sequences must not be inspected before the competition and must not be filtered or selected in any way by the WCA delegate. 4B2. Scramble sequences for a group must be available only to the WCA delegate before the start of that group and must only be available to the WCA delegate and the scramblers for the group until it is finished. Exception for 3x3x3 fewest moves, competitors will receive scramble sequences during the round. See Article E. 4B2A. The designated WCA delegate for the competition must only give access to scramble sequences for future groups to other members of the organization team if they will be temporarily unavailable, for example, competing themselves, and should give others access to the minimum possible amount of scrambles in this case. 4B3. Specification for a scramble program. An official scramble sequence must produce a random state from all states that require at least 2 moves to solve, equal probability for each state. The following additions or exceptions apply. 4B3A. For blindfolded events, the scramble sequence must orient the puzzle randomly, equal probability for each orientation. 4B3B. 2x2x2 cubed. The random state must require at least 4 moves to solve. 4B3C. Cubed. The random state must require at least 7 moves to solve. 4B3D. Square 1. The random state must require at least 11 moves to solve. 4B3E. 5x5x5 cubed. 6x6x6 cubed. 7x7x7 cubed. Megamix. Sufficiently many random moves instead of random state at least 2 moves to solve. 4B3F. Pyramix. The random state must require at least 6 moves to solve. 4B4. Each scramble sequence should be applied during a maximum time frame of 2 hours. This time frame starts when the scramble sequence is applied for the first time. 4D. Scrambling orientation. 4D1. N by N by N cubes and megamix are scrambled starting with the right face, if not possible, then the lightest face on the top, and the darkest adjacent green face, if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face on the front. 4D2. Pyramix is scrambled starting with the yellow face, if not possible, then the lightest face on the bottom, and the green face, if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face on the front. 4D3. Square 1 is scrambled starting with the darker color on front out of the 2 possible scrambling orientations. 4D4. Clock is scrambled starting with either side in front and 12 o'clock pointing up. 4D5. Cube is scrambled starting with the white face, if not possible, then the lightest face on top, and the green face, if not possible, then the darkest adjacent face in the front left. 4F. Competition scramble sequences must be generated using a current official version of the official WCA scramble program available via the WCA website. 4G. After scrambling a puzzle, the scrambler must have verified that the puzzle is scrambled correctly. If the puzzle state is wrong, the scrambler must correct it, for example, by solving the puzzle and applying the scramble sequence again. 4G1. Exception. For the 6x6x6 cube, 7x7x7 cube, and megamix, it is not necessary to correct the puzzle state at the discretion of the WCA delegate. Article 5. Puzzle defects. 5A. Examples of puzzle defects include popped parts, pieces twisted in place, and detached screws or caps or stickers. 5B. If a puzzle defect occurs during an attempt, the competitor may choose to either repair the defect and continue the attempt or to stop the attempt. 5B1. If a competitor chooses to repair the puzzle, they must repair only the defective parts. Tools and or parts of other puzzles must not be used to repair the original puzzle. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt. DNF. 5B2. Any repair to a puzzle must not give the competitor an advantage in solving the puzzle. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt. DNF. 5B3. Permitted repairs. 5B3A. If any parts have fallen out or moved out of place, the competitor competitor may place them back. 5b3b. If the competitor repairs the puzzle but finds that the puzzle is unsolvable later during the solve, they may disassemble and reassemble a maximum of 4 pieces to make the puzzle solvable. 5b3c. If the puzzle is unsolvable and can be made solvable by rotating a single corner piece, the competitor may correct the corner piece by twisting it in place without disassembling the puzzle. 5b4. During a blindfolded phase, see regulation b4, all repairs must be performed blindfolded. Penalty disqualification of the attempt to DNF. 5b5. If some parts of the puzzle are physically detached or not fully placed at the end of the solve, the following regulations apply. 5b5a. If one or more parts without coloured faces are affected, the puzzle is considered solved. 5b5b. If one part with one coloured face is affected, the puzzle is considered solved. 5b5c. If more than one part with one coloured face is affected, the puzzle is considered unsolved. DNF. 5b5d. If one or more parts with more than one coloured face are affected, the puzzle is considered unsolved. DNF. 5b5e. Regulations 5b5c and 5b5d supersede 5b5a and 5b5b. Article 7. Environment. 7b. Spectators must remain at least 1.5 meters away from the solving stations when they are in use. 7c. Lighting of the competition area must be given special attention. Lighting should be neutral such that competitors can easily differentiate among the colours in the puzzles. 7e. The competition area must be smoke-free. 7f. Solving station. 7f1. Definition. 7f1a. Stack mat. The speed stack mat timer and a full-size compatible mat. Generation 2, Generation 3 Pro Timer and or Generation 4 Pro Timer must be used for time measurement. 7f1b. Mat. The mat of the stack mat. 7f1c. Timer. The timer of the stack mat or stopwatch for longer attempts. 7f1d. Surface. The flat surface on which the stack mat has been placed. The mat is considered a part of the surface. The timer is not considered a part of the surface. 7f2. The stack mat timer must be attached to the mat and placed on the surface with the timer on the side of the mat nearest to the competitor. 7f3. The organization team should modify stack mat timers to be more robust against common incidents by making the buttons more difficult to press by accident. For example, by attaching O-rings around the buttons and securing the battery more firmly. For example, by padding the battery compartment. 7h. The competition area must have one or more competitor waiting areas superseded by regulation Y6A. 7h1. The organization team may require that a competitor who has been called to compete must remain within their assigned competitor waiting area until the competitor has finished all attempts for the round. 7h2. Definition. A competitor waiting area is an area in which competitors in a group wait out to be called to a solving station. Article 9. Events. 9a. The WCA governs competitions for mechanical puzzles that are operated by twisting groups of pieces commonly known as Twizy puzzles. 9b. The official events of the WCA are 9b1, 3x3x3 cube, 2x2x2 cube, 4x4x4 cube, 5x5x5 cube, 3x3x3 one-handed, clock, Megamix, Pyramix, cube, and square one. 9b1a. Full rounded format for these events, average of 5. 9b1b. Quad-off format for these events, bust of 2, cut-off phase for average of 5. 9b2. 6x6x6 cube and 7x7x7 cube. 9b2a. Full round format for these events, mean of 3. 9b2b. Cut-off format for these events, best of 1, cut-off phase for mean of 3. 9b3. 3x3x3 blindfolded, 4x4x4 blindfolded, 5x5x5 blindfolded. 9b3a. Full round format for these events, best of 3. 9b3b. For these events, the WCA also recognizes mean of 3 rankings of records based on the times from best of 3 rounds. 9b4. 3x3x3 fewest moves. 9b4a. Full round format for these events, best of x, where x is 1 or 2, or mean of 3. 9b4b. Cutoff formats for this event, best of 1, cutoff phase for best of 2, or best of x, where x is 1 or 2, cutoff phase for mean of 3. 9b5. 3x3x3 multi-blind. 9b5a. Full round formats for this event, best of x, where x is 1, 2, or 3. 9b5a. Cutoff formats for this event, best of x, where x is 1 or 2, cutoff phase for best of y, where y is 2 or 3, and y is greater than x. 9f. The results of a round are measured as follows. 9f1. All timed results under 10 minutes except the 3x3x3 multiplied are measured and truncated to the nearest hundredth of a second. All timed averages and means under 10 minutes are measured and rounded to the nearest hundredth of a second. 9f2. All timed results, averages and means over 10 minutes as well as all times for 3x3x3 multiplied results are measured and rounded to the nearest second. For example, x.49 becomes x, x.50 becomes x plus 1. 9f4. The result of an attempt is recorded as DNF, did not finish, if the attempt is disqualified or unsolved or unfinished. 9f5. The result of an attempt is recorded as DNS, did not start, if the competitor is eligible for an attempt but declines it. 9f6. For best of x rounds, each competitor is allotted x attempts. The best result of these attempts determines the competitor's ranking in the round. 9f7. For best of x rounds, a DNF or DNS is the worst possible result. 9f8. For average of 5 rounds, competitors are allotted 5 attempts. Of these 5 attempts, the best and worst attempts are removed, and the arithmetic mean of the remaining 3 attempts determines the competitor's ranking in the round. 9f9. For average of 5 rounds, 1 DNF or DNS is permitted to count as the competitor's worst result of the round. If the competitor has more than 1 DNF and or DNS result in the round, their average result for the round is DNF. 9f10. For mean of 3 rounds, competitors are allotted 3 attempts. The arithmetic mean of the 3 attempts determines the competitor's ranking in the round. 9f11. For mean of 3 rounds, if the competitor has at least 1 DNF or DNS result, their average result for the round is DNF. 9f12. For best of x rounds, rankings are assessed based on the best result per competitor. The following are used to compare results. 9f12a. For timed results, better is defined as the shorter time. 9f12b. For 3x3x3 fewest moves, better is defined as the shorter solution length. 9f12c. For 3x3x3 multiplying, rankings are assessed based on the number of puzzles solved minus the number of puzzles not solved, where a greater difference is better. If the difference is less than 0, or if only one puzzle is solved, the attempt is considered unsolved. DNF. If a competitor has achieved the same result, rankings are based on total time, where the shorter recorded time is better. If competitors achieve the same result at the same time, rankings are assessed based on the number of puzzles the competitors fail to solve, where fewer unsolved puzzles are better. 9F13. For mean of 3 and average of 5 rounds, rankings are assessed based on the ordering of the averages or means of the competitors, where better is the smaller recorded result. 9F14. For mean of 3 and average of 5 rounds, if 2 or more competitors achieve identical average or mean results, rankings are assessed based on the best attempt per competitor, where better is defined as the smaller recorded result. 9F15. Competitors who achieve the same result in a round receive an identical ranking for the round. 9G. A cutoff round is a round with a best of X cutoff phase and a cutoff requirement, for example, best of 2 with a cutoff requirement of strictly better than 2 minutes. If the competitor satisfies the cutoff requirement in at least one of their cutoff phase attempts, they are eligible for the remaining attempts. Attempts on the cutoff phase count towards the full round format. 9I. Results of official WCA competitions must be listed on the WCA World Rankings. 9I1. The WCA recognizes the following types of regional records: national records, continental records, and world records. 9I2. All the results of the round are considered to take place from the last calendar date of the round. If a regional record is broken multiple times on the same calendar date, only the best result is recognized as breaking that regional record. 9I3. If the WCA regulations for an event are changed, existing regional records stand until they are broken under the new WCA regulations. 9J. Each event must be held at most once per competition. 9K. All competitors may participate in all events of a competition except in cases specifically approved by the WCA competition announcement team. 9L. Each round must be completed before any following round of the same event can start. 9M. Events must have at most 4 rounds. 9M1. Rounds with 99 or fewer competitors must have at most 2 subsequent rounds. 9M2. Rounds with 15 or fewer competitors must have at most 1 subsequent round. 9M3. Rounds with 7 or fewer competitors must not have subsequent rounds. 9O. Cutoff rounds count as 1 round when counting the number of rounds per event. 9P. If an event has multiple rounds, then 9P1. At least 25% of competitors must be eliminated between consecutive rounds of the same event. 9B2. The competitors who advance to the next round must be determined by ranking best X competitors or by result or competitors with a better result than X in the preceding round. 9B2A. For each round, advancement conditions must be announced before the round starts and should not be changed after a hit has begun. Changes must be made at the discretion of the WCA delegate, who must carefully consider the fairness of the change. 9B3. If a qualifying competitor withdraws from a round, they may be replaced by the best ranked non-qualifying competitor from the preceding round. 9S. Each round of each event must have a time limit. See Regulation A1A. 9T. If any change occurs to the result of a competitor after the competition has ended, for example, score taking, mistake, retroactive penalty, such that the competitor should not have advanced in the next round or was not allowed to take part in the next round, all the results of this competitor for all subsequent rounds must be removed. 9T1. If this makes a round no longer comply with 9P1, results of other competitors must not be removed. 9T2. If this makes a round no longer comply with the Regulation 9M1, 9M2, or 9M3, any subsequent round must not be removed. 93. If any change occurs to the result of a competitor such that another competitor should not have advanced to the next round, the result of the second competitor must not be removed. Article 10. Solved state. 10b. Only the resting state of the puzzle after the timer has been solved is considered. 10c. The puzzle must be in any orientation at the end of the solve. 10d. All parts of a puzzle must be physically attached to the puzzle and fully placed in their required positions. Exception. See Regulation 5b5. 10e. A puzzle is solved when all colored parts are reassembled and all parts are aligned within the limits specified below. 10e1. For every 2 adjacent parts, for example, 2 parallel adjacent slices of a cube, of the puzzle that are misaligned by more than the limit described in Regulation 10F, the puzzle is considered to require 1 additional move to solve. See Outer Block Term Metric in Article 12. 10E2. If no further moves are required to bring the puzzle to its solved state, the puzzle is considered solved without penalty. 10E3. If 1 move is required, the puzzle is to be considered solved with a time penalty, plus 2 seconds. 10E4. If more than 1 move is required, the puzzle is considered unsolved. DNF. 10F. Limits of acceptable misalignment for puzzles. 10F1. N by N cubes, at most 45 degrees. 10F2. Megamix, at most 36 degrees. 10F3. Pyramix and cube, at most 60 degrees. 10F4. Square 1, at most 45 degrees UD, or 90 degrees slash. 10H. Puzzles not specified in this article are judged according to the solved state as defined by the generally accepted goal of the puzzle. 10H1. The solved state of clock is achieved when all 18 in clock phases point to 12 o'clock. Article 11. Incidents. 11A. Incidents include 11A1. Incorrect execution of event procedures by officials or competitors. 11A2. Interference or facility interruptions, for example, power failure, emergency alarm activation. 11A3. Equipment malfunction. 11B. If an incident occurs, the WCA delegate determines an impartial and appropriate course of action. 11D. If the WCA regulations are not fully clear, or if the incident is not covered by the WCA regulations, then the WCA delegate must make a decision based on fair sportsmanship. Also see Regulation 11E3. 11E. If an incident occurs during an attempt, the WCA delegate may grant a competitor an extra attempt, replacing the attempt during which the incident occurred. The competitor must appeal verbally or in writing to the judge and WCA delegate at the time of the incident before finishing the original attempt to be eligible for an extra attempt. An appeal does not guarantee the competitor an extra attempt. 11E1. If a competitor is granted an extra attempt, the extra attempt must be scrambled using a different scramble sequence. This scramble sequence must be generated using a current official version of an official WCA scramble program. See Regulation 4F. 11E2. If a competitor is granted an extra attempt, the extra attempt should be done right after the attempt that caused it and must replace the original regularly numbered attempt. 11e3. If it is unclear whether an incident should result in an extra attempt, the competitor may be granted a provisional extra attempt that will be used only if it is later found that an extra attempt was inappropriate, for example by a decision of the WCRC. 11f. Decisions about an incident may be supported with video or photographic analysis at the discretion of the WCA delegate. 11g. The WCA delegate must ensure that copies of the regulations and guidelines are available, for example printed, digital, or accessible via internet, to officials and competitors for consultation on any incidents. 11h. The WCA delegate may require competitors in serious violation of Regulation 2K3 to leave the competition venue, taking into account the seriousness of the situation and the best possible course of action. If the competitor refuses to do so, they may face disciplinary action in the WCA. Article 12. Notation. 12a. Notation for and cubes. 12a1. Face moves out of slice. 12a1a. Clockwise 90 degrees. F. Front face. B. Back face. R. Right face. L. Left face. U. Upper face. D. Bottom face. 12a1b. Counterclockwise 90 degrees. F prime. B prime. R prime. L prime. U prime. D prime. 12a1c. 180 degrees. F2. B2. R2. L2. U2. D2. 12a2. Out of block moves. Out of slice with adjacent inner slices. For each of the moves defined below, n is the total number of slices to move, which must be in the range 1 is less than n is less than big N, where big N is the number of layers in the puzzle, and may also be omitted for an implicit value of n equals 2 slices. Out of block moves are 12a2a, clockwise 90 degrees, NFW, NBW, NRW, NLW, NUW, and DW. 12a2b, counterclockwise 90 degrees, NFW prime, NBW prime, NRW prime, NLW prime, and UW prime, and DW prime. 12a2c, 180 degrees, NFW2, NBW2, NRW2, NLW2, and UW2, and DW2. 12a4, rotations, entire puzzle. 12a4a, clockwise 90 degrees, x, same direction as R or L prime. Y, same direction as U or D prime. Z, same direction as F or B prime. 12a4b, counterclockwise 90 degrees, x prime, same direction as R prime or L. Y prime, same direction as U prime or D. Z prime, same direction as F prime or B. 12a4c, 180 degrees, x2, y2, z2. 12a5, out of block term metric, OBTM, is defined as 12a5a. Each move of the category's face moves and out of block moves is counted as 1 move. 12a5b, each move of the rotations category is counted as 0 moves. 12a6, execution term metric, ETM, is defined as each move of the category's face moves, out of block moves, and rotations is counted as 1 move. 12c, notation for square 1. 12c1, moves are applied with one of the two smallest surfaces of the equatorial slice on the left side of the front face. 12c2, x, y means turned upper layer x times 30 degrees clockwise, turn bottom layer y times 30 degrees clockwise. X and y must be integers from -5 to 6 and cannot be both equal to 0. 12c3, slash means turn the right half of the puzzle 180 degrees. 12c4, metric for square 1. X, y counts as 1 move, slash counts as 1 move. 12d, notation for Megaminx, scrambling notation only. 12d1, face moves. 12d1a, clockwise 72 degrees. U, upper face. 12d1b, counterclockwise 72 degrees. U prime, upper face. 12d2, other moves are applied while keeping 3 pieces fixed at the top of the puzzle. 12d2c, clockwise 144 degrees, move the whole puzzle except for the slice of top left 3 pieces. R++, vertical slices. D++, horizontal slices. 12d2t, 12d2d, counterclockwise 144 degrees, move the whole puzzle except for the slice of top left 3 pieces. R-, vertical slices. D-, horizontal slices. 12e, notation for pyraminx. 12e1, the puzzle is oriented with the bottom face completely horizontal and the front face facing the person who is holding the pyraminx. 12e2, clockwise 120 degrees. U, upper 2 layers. L, left 2 layers. R, right 2 layers. B, back 2 layers. Small u, upper vertex. Small l, left vertex. Small r, right vertex. Small b, back vertex. 12e3, counterclockwise 120 degrees. U prime, upper 2 layers. L prime, left 2 layers. R prime, right 2 layers. B prime, back 2 layers. Small u prime, upper vertex. Small l prime, left vertex. Small r prime, right vertex. Small r, b prime, back vertex. 12g, notation for clock. 12g1, the puzzle is oriented with 12-foot clock on top and either side in front. 12g2, move pins up. UR, top right. DR, bottom right. DL, bottom left. UL, top left. U, both top. R, both right. D, both bottom. L, both left. All. 12g3, turn a wheel next to an up position pin and move all pins down afterwards. X+, X clockwise turns. X-, X counterclockwise turns. 12g4, turn around the puzzle so that 12 o'clock stays on top and then move all pins down. Y2. 12h, notation for skewb. 12h1, the puzzle is oriented with 3 faces fully visible where the upper face is on top. 12h2, clockwise 120 degrees. R, the layer around the farthest visible bottom right vertex. U, the layer around the farthest visible upper vertex. L, the layer around the farthest visible bottom left vertex. B, the layer around the farthest visible B, the layer around the farthest non-visible back vertex. 12h3, counterclockwise 120 degrees. R prime, the layer around the farthest visible bottom right vertex. U prime, the layer around the farthest visible upper vertex. L prime, the layer around the farthest visible bottom left vertex. B prime, the layer around the farthest visible non-visible back vertex. Article A. Speed solving. A1. Speed solving attempts must abide by the following procedures, partially superseded by Regulation Y7. A1A. The organisation team must apply exactly one kind of time limit per attempt or cumulative time limit to each round. A1A1. The default time limit is 10 minutes for each attempt in a round, though the organisation team may announce a higher or lower time limit per attempt. In this case, the limit must be the same for all attempts in a round. A1A2. For events other than 3x3x3 fuse moves and 3x3x3 multiblind, the organisation team may define a cumulative time limit. The cumulative time limit must either apply to all attempts in one round, for example, 3 attempts with a cumulative time limit of 20 minutes, or to all attempts in a combination of rounds for different events. In this case, the time limit for a particular attempt is the cumulative time limit minus the total time in other attempts counting towards the time limit so far. See Regulation A1A5. If a round has an applicable cumulative time limit, it must have at most 1. A1A3. The time limits for all rounds must be announced before the competition and should not be changed after any affected rounds have begun. Changes must be made at the discretion of the WCA delegate, who must carefully consider the fairness of the change. A1A4. The competitor must end each solve before the time limit for the attempt is reached. If a competitor's timer reaches the time limit for an attempt, the judge stops the solve immediately and records the result as DNF. Exception: 3x3x3 multiblind. See Regulation H1B1. A1A5. The time counting towards the time limit for an attempt is either the result after the time penalties are applied if the result was not DNF, or the result elapsed in the solve if the result was DNF. A1B. If the time limit for an attempt is greater than 10 minutes, a stopwatch must be used for timekeeping. A1B1. A stack map must be used in addition to the stopwatch. Exception: for events without inspection where the competitor is expected to exceed 10 minutes, use of the stack mat is optional. A1B2. If a time from the stack mat timer is available, it is the original recorded time. Otherwise, for example, the stack mat timer malfunctioned, ran for over 10 minutes, or was not used at all, the stopwatch time is the original recorded time. A1C. A competitor participating in an event must be able to fulfill the event's requirements. See Regulation 2K6. A2. Scrambling. A2A. When called for a round, the competitor submits the puzzle in its solved state to the scrambler. The competitor then waits in their assigned competitor waiting area until they are called to compete. A2B. A scrambler scrambles the puzzle according to the regulations under Article 4. A2B1. For square 1, the organisation team may enforce placing a thin object in the puzzle to prevent accidental moves from being applied before the start of the attempt. If these objects are used, the organisation team should make an announcement before the round starts. A2C. After the scrambler starts scrambling the puzzle, the competitor must not see the puzzle until the inspection phase starts. A2C1. The scrambler places a cover over the scramble puzzle that makes it impossible for any competitors or spectators to see any part of the puzzle. The cover remains over the puzzle until the start of the attempt. A2D. When taking a puzzle from the scrambler, the judge briefly inspects the puzzle to ensure thorough scrambling of the puzzle. The judge raises any concerns with the scrambler, who then conducts a detailed check. A2D1. The scrambler or an authorized judge must check the scrambled puzzle and sign or initial the score sheet to affirm that they applied the correctly numbered scramble sequence and check that it matches the image. See Regulation 4G. Exception: for 6x6 cube, 7x7x7 cube, and Megaminx, the scrambler may sign or initial to affirm that the puzzle is sufficiently scrambled. See Regulation 4G1. A2E. The judge places the puzzle onto the mat in an arbitrary orientation while ensuring that it remains completely covered. A2E1. The competitor is not permitted to request a specific orientation, and the judge must not influence the orientation they place the puzzle on the mat based on what they know or expect the puzzle state to be. A3. Inspection. A3A. The competitor may inspect the puzzle at the start of each attempt. A3A1. The competitor is allotted a maximum of 15 seconds to inspect the puzzle and start the solve. A3B. The judge prepares the timer by turning it on and resetting if necessary. Separately, the judge also prepares a stopwatch for timing inspection, partially superseded by Regulation Y7D1. A3B1. When the judge believes the competitor is ready, the judge asks, "Ready?" The competitor must be ready to start the attempt within 1 minute from the moment they are asked, or else the competitor forfeits the attempt to DNS at the discretion of the judge. A3B2. The competitor starts the attempt by confirming that they are ready, and the judge uncovers the puzzle and starts timing the inspection. A3C. The competitor may pick up the puzzle during inspection. A3C1. The competitor must not apply moves during inspection. Penalty: disqualification of the attempt. DNF. A3C2. If the parts of the puzzle are not fully aligned, then the competitor may align the faces as long as misalignments stay within the limits of Regulation 10F. A3C3. The competitor may reset the timer before the start of the solve. A3C4. For square 1, if the use of a thin object inside the puzzle has been enforced by the organisation team to Regulation A2B1, the competitor may remove the object from the puzzle during inspection. A3D. At the end of the inspection, the competitor places the puzzle on the mat in any orientation. Penalty for placing it outside the mat: time penalty, plus 2 seconds. A3D2. When 8 seconds of inspection have elapsed, the judge calls 8 seconds. A3D3. When 12 seconds of inspection have elapsed, the judge calls 12 seconds. A4. Sudden solve. A4B. The competitor uses their fingers to touch the elevated sensor surfaces of the timer. The competitor's palms must be facing down and located on the side of the timer that is closer to the competitor. Penalty: time penalty, plus 2 seconds. A4B1. The competitor must have no physical contact with the puzzle while starting the solve. Penalty: penalty, time penalty plus 2 seconds. A4D, if a stack match timer is in use, the competitor should keep their hands on the timer until they see a green timer light. They start the solve by removing their hands from the timer, thus starting the timer. A4D1, the competitor must start the solve within 15 seconds of the start of the inspection. Penalty, time penalty plus 2 seconds. A4D2, the competitor must start the solve within 17 seconds of the start of the inspection. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. A4D3, if a stopwatch is in use, the judge starts the solve as soon as the competitor starts the solve. A4E, time penalties for starting the solve are cumulative. A5, during the solve. A5A, while inspecting or solving the puzzle, the competitor must not communicate with anyone other than the judge or the WCA delegate. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. A5B, while inspecting or solving the puzzle, the competitor must not receive assistance from anyone or any object other than the service. Also see Regulation 2I, penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. A5C, the competitor may hold the puzzle against the service to help operate the puzzle, see Regulation 7F1D. A6, stopping the solve. A6A, the competitor releases the puzzle before stopping the solve and stops the solve by stopping the timer. If a stopwatch is in use, the judge stops the stopwatch as soon as the competitor does this. A6A1, when using a stopwatch as the only timer, the competitor stops the solve by releasing the puzzle and notifying the judge that they have stopped the solve. The judge stops the solve as soon as the competitor does this. A6A2, when using a stopwatch as the only timer, the competitor's default notification signal consists of releasing the puzzles from their hands and placing their hands on the surface with the palms down. The competitor and the judge may agree on another appropriate notification before the start of the attempt. A6B, the competitor is responsible for stopping the stackman timer correctly. A6B1, if the timer stops before the competitor has solved the puzzle and the timer shows the time strictly below 0.06 seconds, then the attempt is replaced by an extra attempt. A competitor forfeits the right to the additional attempt if the WCA delegate determines that the timer will stop deliberately. A6B2, if the timer stops before the competitor has solved the puzzle and displays a time of 0.06 seconds or higher, then the attempt is disqualified, DNF. Exception, if the competitor can demonstrate that the timer malfunctioned, they may receive an extra attempt at the discretion of the WCA delegate. A6C, the competitor must fully release the puzzle before stopping the timer. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Exception, if no moves have been applied after stopping the timer and before releasing the puzzle, a time penalty plus 2 seconds may be assigned instead at the discretion of the judge. A6D, the competitor must stop the time using both hands placed flat in the sensors with palms down. Penalty, time penalty, plus 2 seconds. A6E, after stopping the time, the competitor must not touch or apply a move to the puzzle until the judge has inspected the puzzle. A6E1, penalty for applying a move to the puzzle after stopping the timer, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. A6E2, penalty for touching the puzzle after stopping the timer without applying any moves, time penalty, plus 2 seconds. Exception, if immediately after stopping the timer, the competitor briefly touches the puzzle without affecting its state, the time penalty may be lifted at the discretion of the judge, see Regulation 11F. A6F, the competitor must not reset the timer until both the competitor and the timer and the judge have signed the score sheet. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF, the discretion of the judge. A6F1, if the competitor resets the timer before the result has been completely recorded, the judge must not write down the result from memory or from video or photographic evidence and must disqualify the attempt instead, DNF. A6G, the judge determines whether the puzzle is solved. They must not touch the puzzle before they have determined whether to assign a penalty for misalignment. Exception, for clock, the judge will usually need to pick up the puzzle to verify both faces. A6H, in case of a dispute, moves or alignments must not be applied to the puzzle before the dispute is resolved. A6I, time penalties for stopping the solve are cumulative. A7, recording results. A7A, the judge tells the competitor the result. A7A1, if the judge finds that the puzzle is solved, they call OK. A7A2, if the judge assigns any penalties, they call penalty. A7A3, if the result is DNF, the judge calls DNF. A7B, the judge records the result in a score sheet and signs next to the result to acknowledge that the result is correct, complete, properly formatted, and clearly readable. A7B1, if penalties are assigned, the judge records the original recorded time displayed on the timer along with any penalties. The format should be x plus t plus y equals f, where x represents the time of time penalties before or starting the solve, t represents the time displayed on the timer, the original recorded time, y represents the sum of time penalties during or after the solve, and f represents the final result, for example, 2 plus 17.65 plus 2 equals 21.65. If x and or y is 0, these 0 terms are omitted, for example, 17.65 plus 2 is 19.65. A7C, the competitor must check the recorded result and sign or initial the score sheet to acknowledge that the result is correct, complete, properly formatted, and clearly readable. This finishes the attempt. A7C1, if the competitor or the judge refuses to accept and sign the score sheet, the WCA delegate must resolve the dispute. A7C2, if the competitor signs or otherwise marks an attempt before they have begun it, they forfeit the attempt and the result will be considered DNS. A7C3, if the competitor signs or otherwise marks an attempt after starting the attempt but before the judge has finished recording the result, the attempt will be considered unfinished, DNF. A7C4, the competitor should not sign an attempt before the judge has recorded and signed the attempt. The competitor is ultimately responsible for ensuring that they and the judge have signed an attempt. If an attempt is found to be missing on both signatures after the judge delivered the score sheet to the score taker, see Regulation A7F, it will be considered unfinished, DNF. A7C5, 5. Missing signatures found before the end of the competition may be added by the judge and or the competitor at the discretion of the WCA delegate. A7F. When a competitor's score sheet for a round is complete, the judge delivers the score sheet to the score taker. A7G. At the discretion of the WCA delegate, an incident or penalty caused by a new competitor's inexperience may be replaced with an extra attempt. Article B. Blindfolded solving. B1. Standard speed solving procedures are followed as described in Article A. Speed solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below, partially superseded by Regulation Y7. B1A. There is no inspection period. B1B. The competitor supplies their own blindfold. B2. Starting the attempt. B2A. The judge resets the timers as in Regulation A3B and indicates that they are ready for the competitor to start the attempt. For example, placing the puzzle cover in front of the competitor, saying ready, giving a thumbs up signal. The competitor must start the attempt within 1 minute, or else the competitor forfeits the attempt, DNS, at the discretion of the judge, partially superseded by Regulation Y7D1. B2B. The competitor uses their fingers to touch the elevated sensor surfaces of the timer. The competitor's palms must be facing down and located on the side of the timer that is closest to them. Penalty, time penalty, plus 2 seconds. B2C. The competitor must have no physical contact with the puzzle or the puzzle cover while starting the attempt. Penalty, time penalty, plus 2 seconds. B2B. B2D. The competitor starts the attempt by removing their hands from the timer thus starting the timer. This also starts to solve. B2D1. The competitor removes the cover from the puzzle after starting the timer. B2E. If a stopwatch is in use in addition to a stack time, the judge starts the stopwatch as soon as the competitor starts to solve. P2F is if stopwatch is in use as the only timer, the competitor places their hands on the table instead of a stackmat timer. After confirming that they are ready, the competitor starts to solve by lifting the cover. The judge starts the stopwatch as soon as the competitor starts to solve. B3. Memorization phase. B3A. The competitor may pick up the puzzle during the memorization phase. B3B. The competitor must not make physical notes. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. B3C. The competitor must not apply moves to the puzzle during the memorization phase. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. B3D. If the parts of the puzzle are not fully aligned, then the competitor may align the faces as long as misalignments stay within the limits of Regulation 10F. See Regulation A3C2. B4. Blindfolded phase. B4A. The competitor dons the blindfold to start the blindfolded phase. B4A1. Until the competitor applies the first move to the puzzle, they may remove the blindfold to return to the memorization phase. B4B. The competitor must not apply moves to the puzzle before they have fully donned the blindfold. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. B4C. As soon as the competitor applies the first move to the puzzle, the judge must ensure that there is a sight blocker, for example, a sheet of paper or cardboard, between the competitor's face and the puzzle. B4C1. In all cases, the competitor must wear the blindfold such that their view of the puzzle would still clearly be blocked if the sight blocker were not in the way. B4C3. If the judge and competitor agree beforehand, the competitor may choose to place the puzzle behind a suitable object, for example, a music stand, the surface of the table, by themselves during the blindfold phase. B4D. The competitor must not look at the puzzle at any point during the blindfold phase. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. B5. Stopping the solve. B5A. When using the stackmat timer, the competitor stops the solve by releasing the puzzle and then stopping the timer. B5B. When using a stopwatch, the competitor stops the solve by placing the puzzle back onto the surface and notifying the judge that they are stopping the solve. At that moment, the judge stops the timer. B5C. If the competitor is not touching the puzzle, they may remove the blindfold before they stop the timer. They must not touch the puzzle until the end of the solve. Penalty for touching the puzzle, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Article C. One-handed solving. C1. Standard speed solving procedures are followed as described in Article A, speed solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below. C1B. During the solve, the competitor must use only one hand to operate the puzzle. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. C1B2. If a puzzle defect occurs and the competitor chooses to repair it, they must repair it using only the solving hand. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. C1B3. If other body parts of the competitors come in contact with the puzzle or parts of the puzzle without the competitor's intention and without applying moves, this is not considered operating the puzzle at the discretion of the judge. C1B4. During the solve, the competitor may hold the puzzle against the surface to help operate the puzzle. See Regulation 7F1D. C1C. During the solve, once the competitor operates the puzzle with one hand, they must not operate the puzzle with the other hand. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Article E. Fuse move solving. E2. Procedure for 3x3x3 fuse moves. E2A. The judge distributes a scramble sequence with paper to all competitors. The judge then starts the stopwatch and calls go. E2A1. Before the attempt has begun, the competitor must not write on any paper intended for the attempt, except the competitor may write on information to identify the attempt. See Regulation E2C1. If they write this information on the paper that contains the scramble sequence, they must write only on the side without the scramble sequence before the attempt. Penalty for writing anything other than information to identify the attempt, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E2B. All competitors have a total time limit of 60 minutes to find and write a solution. E2B1. The judge shall call 5 minutes remaining at 55 minutes and must call stop at 60 minutes. E2C. At 60 minutes, each competitor must submit to the judge a single piece of paper with a written solution and information to identify the attempt. E2C1. Information to identify the attempt is the competitor's name, WCA ID, or competition registrant ID, at least one, optionally multiple, and optionally the competition name, round, or attempt number. Penalty for a submitted solution without name, WCA ID, or competition registrant ID, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E2C2. The solution must be a single unambiguous move sequence with individual move written out in sequential order. Penalty for an ambiguous solution, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E2C3, the competitor should clearly black out or scribble out all moves on the paper that are not part of their intended solution. E2C4, the competitor's solution must only use moves that are exactly defined as notation for the 3x3x3 cube in regulation 12a, and must not use any symbols or combinations of symbols that are not specifically defined there. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E2C5, the competitor's solution is considered correct if starting with the solved puzzle and applying the scramble sequence followed by the solution results in a solved puzzle. Penalty for an incorrect solution, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E2D, the competitor's result is the number of moves in their solution calculated using outer block term metrics, see regulation 12a5. E2D1, the competitor's solution must not exceed 80 moves, including rotations, when calculated using execution term metrics, see regulation 12a6. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E2E, the competitor's solution must not be directly derived from any part of the scramble sequence. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF, at the discretion of the WCA delegate. E2E1, the WCA delegate may ask the competitor to explain the purpose of each move in their solution, irrespective of their scramble sequence. If the competitor cannot give a valid explanation, the attempt is disqualified, DNF. E3, the competitor may use the following objects during the attempt. Penalty for using unauthorized objects, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. E3A, paper supplied by the judge and pens or pencils or similar supplied by the judge or optionally self-supplied. E3B, 3x3x3 cubes, at most 3 self-supplied as described in Article 3. E3C, stickers self-supplied. E3D, stopwatch or watch self-supplied for keeping track of the elapsed time if it is approved by the WCA delegate. E3E, other non-electronic aids that do not give an unfair advantage at the discretion of the WCA delegate, see regulation 2I1. E3F, tools to remove markings self-supplied, such as correction fluid, correction table, or erasers. E4, the WCA delegate may choose to publish the solutions, for example, photo of the score sheets or transcriptions of solutions. Article F, clock solving. F1. Standard speed solving procedures are followed as described in Article A. Speed solving additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article A are described below. F2. The judge places the scrambled puzzle onto the mat in a standing position. F2A. The organization team may enforce using a stand for the puzzle to prevent it from falling before the start of the attempt. If such stands are used, the organization team should make an announcement before the round starts. F2A1. The judge must remove the stand from the mat immediately after the competitor removes the puzzle from it. F3. At the end of the inspection period, the competitor places the puzzle in a standing position. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. F3A. The competitor must not change the positions of any pins from the scrambled positions before the start of the solve. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF. Article H, multi-blind solving. H1, standard blindfolded solving procedures are followed as described in Article B, blindfolded solving. Additional regulations that supersede the corresponding procedures in Article B are described below, partially superseded by Regulation Y7. H1A, before an attempt, the competitor must submit to the organization team the number of puzzles, at least 2, they wish to attempt. H1A1, a competitor is not permitted to change the number of puzzles after submitting their number to the organization team. H1A2, a competitor may request to keep their submission private until all competitors have submitted their numbers. Once all competitors have reported their numbers, the information becomes public. For example, a competitor may ask for the numbers of any other competitors before starting the attempt. H1A3, before the attempt, the scrambled puzzles must be placed on the table in an arbitrary orientation while ensuring they remain completely covered. The puzzles should be arranged in a shape as square as possible. For example, 8 puzzles should be arranged in 2 rows with 3 puzzles and 1 row with 2 puzzles. H1B, if a competitor is attempting fewer than 6 puzzles, they are allotted a time limit of 10 minutes times the number of puzzles in the attempt, else the time limit is 60 minutes. H1B, the competitor may signal the end of the solve at any time. If and when the time limit is reached, the judge stops the attempt and the attempt is then scored. The time limit for the attempt counts as the original recorded time. H1D, time penalties for the puzzles of the attempt are cumulative. H1E, the competitor must not apply any moves to one or more puzzles during the memorization phase. Penalty, disqualification of the attempt, DNF, exception, these individual puzzles may be considered unsolved at the end of the attempt instead of disqualifying the entire attempt at the discretion of the WCA delegate. H2, the competitor may self-supply a flat covering, for example, a mat or cloth, for the surface at the discretion of the WCA delegate. If the competitor wishes to do so, the request must be made at the same time as submitting the number of puzzles to Regulation H1A. Article Y, temporary regulations. Article Y1, additional regulations that supersede all other regulations are described below. These regulations are meant to complement the competition safety policy. Y2, definitions. Y2A, attendee, any person who attends the WCA competition, including competitors, officials, and guests. Y2B, fixed seating, a competition method in which a competitor does all of their attempts in a round at the same solving station. Y3, besides what is required in Regulation 2A, if deemed necessary by the WCA delegate and announced clearly before the competition, an attendee may be required to meet one or more of the following requirements. Y3A, wear a face mask inside the competition venue. Y3B, not to have to come in contact with the person with COVID-19 for at least 14 days before the competition. Y3C, not to have COVID-19 nor to feel COVID-19 symptoms as determined by the World Health Organization for at least 14 days before the competition. Y3D, comply with other reasonable safety measures sanctioned by the World Health Organization or by local governments. Y4, all competitors and officials should bring their own pen to the competition. Y5, judges may bring their own stopwatch or phone for timing inspection, which should be checked by the WCA delegate. Y6, environment. Y6A, if deemed necessary by the WCA delegate, the competition area must not have a competitor waiting area. Y6B, competitors should refrain from touching the surface of the solving station when they are not in the process of an official attempt. Y7. Competing procedures that supersede Article A, B, and H are described below. These procedures do not apply to Article E for use move solving. Y7A. Competition should use fixed seating. See Regulation Y2B. Y7B. The judge should avoid touching the puzzle at all times. Exception for clock. The judge should pick up the puzzle to verify both faces are solved. Y7C. Scrambling. Y7C1. Recall for a round after disinfecting their puzzles. The competitor submits the puzzle in its solved state to the scrambler. The competitor then waits at their assigned solving station. Y7D. Inspection. Y7D1. The judge asks the competitor to prepare the timer by turning it on and resetting if necessary. The competitor then turns the timer on and resets it if necessary. The judge should avoid touching the timer at all times. Y7E. Recording results. Y7E2. The competitor should not touch the score sheet. Y7F. After finishing the attempt, if there are more attempts to be done, the competitor must place the puzzle inside the cover. Oh, jeez. Sub 50. Oh, God. Ugh, look at that. Oh, buggery. I've started again. But, yeah, you saw that, right? 47.56.57. Oh, Jesus. That's a lot of regs. Ugh. Bloody hell. Turn that back. Ugh. Well, I was hoping for sub 45, if I'll be honest. And I do think it's possible. I'm less than 3 minutes away from that, and considering I jumped like 6.5 minutes, I do think it's possible. So I'm going to be trying for that next time, but for now, I'm very, very pleased with myself. Bloody hell, what am I doing with my life?